All right, guys. Hello and welcome to episode number 310 of the Restoring Report podcast. I'm super excited for the content we got planned out for you guys today, as always. This is a podcast for young believers who are pursuing the goal of marriage and family and trying to get married as young as possible in a healthy way. I'm your host, Seth Hensley. I come on twice a week, every week on Thursday and Sunday, to discuss not only the benefits of getting married young, but I try to equip and encourage you in your pursuit of that goal, much like the character that we are going to be discussing in today's episode. If you guys are not aware, about 3 years ago, I think it was 2022 or 2021, we did a Christmas special on the life of Saint Nicholas and some of the works that he did to enable young people to get married young, particularly when it comes to legend. Now, these are not historically known facts, but they are legends that have been handed down, and so there may be some truth to them, and there's definitely value in them, regardless of whether or not they actually happen, because of what he does in this story. And my life aspiration is to be a modern day Saint Nicholas, and I don't mean that as somebody who comes down the chimney and hands presents to children. I mean somebody who actually enables people to get married young and pursue the goal for their life that they believe God has called them to pursue. And that's actually what this story of Saint Nicholas is about. So I'm going to kind of recreate that video that I made long time ago. But if you want to see a alternate version of this video that may have some information in additional to what I talk about in this video, you can go back and listen to that. It was our episode number 100 if you're interested. And so without further ado, let's go ahead and hop right into this. I'm going to be covering the life of Saint Nicholas in relation to what he did to help people get married young. I'm not going to be talking about everything he did. There's a lot of legends surrounding Saint Nicholas. He's actually the patron saint, I believe, of sailors for the work that he did in not only protecting the people on these boats, but praying for the people who were traveling across the ocean. He's done a huge number of good deeds, and that's kind of what granted him the sainthood that he's been given. Heard lots and lots of stories about this guy. Okay, there are lots and lots of legends, but by far the most common, which you may have heard before, involves something that he did for three girls who were trying to get married but were too poor and did not have a dowry to their name, and therefore were unable to find a man, because back then a dowry is what a woman brought to the table for being cared for by a man for the rest of her life. That's what the man got in return. And so because they didn't have dowries, they were finding it difficult to find a partner. And so we're going to talk about what he did for them today. But just to give you a little bio of St. Nicholas, if you go to the vaticannews.va, they say that St. Nicholas lived a life of obedience. He was born in Patara, a south seaside town in Lycia in southern Turkey in the 3rd century. He came from a good family that raised him as a Christian. His life from its earliest days was marked by obedience. When he was orphaned at a young age, Nicholas, remembering the rich young man in the gospel, used his inheritance to assist the needy, the sick, and the poor. Nicholas was born to a wealthy family, and when his parents died, he received a massive inheritance, which then, in his choosing to follow Jesus Christ and devote his life wholly to God, he gave away entirely to the sick and the poor. He was elected Bishop of Myra, I imagine, through some process of actually how much he did for the poor. I believe the Catholic Church weighs their, in order to be a saint, you actually have to do a lot of things, because the Catholic faith is not exactly a work-based religion, but they do place a heavy emphasis on the verse, faith without works is dead, and that's how they sort of, judge and measure their saints. To my understanding. If you have a different understanding than that, please let me know. But he was elected Bishop of Myra, and under the Emperor Diocletian was exiled and imprisoned. After being freed, he attended the Council of Nicaea in 325. So he was actually at the Council of Nicaea, which is a famous council in the Christian faith that discussed some issues involving heresy. And I actually think that there's one legend involving St. Nicholas where he punches, what's his name? Arius in the face because of something Arius was saying that was heretical. There's a great deal of, obviously, discussion and debate around that. Some people find it humorous that he punched a heretic in the face. Other people find it against the Christian faith, using violence to, basically shut down the opposition. And some people, and I think I've heard this from a Catholic, so obviously they're trying to defend him, say that back then a slap was actually a form of reproof and it wasn't a form of assault. So a punch, a closed fist was an assault, and an open palm was a form of correction, which I don't know the history of the time or anything like that, what was considered assault and what was not, but I mean, as far as of Jesus, I do think you have a hard time condoning violence. Jesus did tell at one point his disciples to go buy a sword in the gospel. So I do think that violence becomes a necessary evil at a certain point. Like, I don't think you just need to roll over and let tyrants have their way. But I do think that you should not be the one that incites the violence. I don't think you should be the aggressor as a believer, insofar as you're able. And honestly, I don't know if there's ever really a case where you have to be the aggressor. I think defense is always necessary. I'm making a self-defense and all that. But anyway, that was just a tangent. He was at the Council of Nicaea in 325. And I'm curious, guys, as to what the ranking is of Catholic positions. Like, there's bishop, cardinal, pope, priest. And I want to know kind of what the ranking is. And I think actually I just hit it right pretty much on. It says here that deacons are the lowest ranking in the hierarchy. Priests are ranked above deacons. Archbishops, I forgot about, are ranked above bishops. Then bishops. Oh, I'm sorry. No, they're ranked above bishops. Archbishops are. And then bishops are the highest ranking member of the clergy after the Pope. And cardinals are leading bishops who participate in the papal conclave to elect the next pope. So a cardinal is a bishop who is part of the council, the papal conclave, they call it, to elect the next pope. They must be under 80 years old to vote, and the pope is obviously the leader of the Catholic Church. So I knew he was at the top, but I wasn't sure what the hierarchy was below that. So it looks like it goes pope, and then it goes archbishop, cardinal, bishop, priest, deacon, maybe. Actually, it might go pope, cardinal, archbishop, bishop, priest, deacon. That's probably the category. So the hierarchy. So if you're curious about that, that's what it was. And he was elected Bishop of Myra. So this Saint Nicholas was actually one of the highest ranking people in the Catholic Church, the highest ranking positions in the Catholic Church. He died in Myra on the 6th of December in the year 343. So he lived, let's see here. He died in 343, so let's assume he lived a normal lifespan of about 80 years. He was born about 200 years after Jesus Christ, by my math, which is really rough. So I might check that here in a minute. But and he spent many stories been handed down about St. Nicholas, all testifying to a life spent in service to the weak, the small, and defenseless. And so that's just a little bit of background on St. Nicholas. This is a video that I'm going to review on the life of St. Nicholas, called Nicholas of Myra. It was done by a guy whose videos I'm enjoying more and more. I will include the link to this video, and you can therefore find his YouTube channel through that link in the show notes. If you're interested in looking at what he has to say, I really like his setup here. So without further ado, let's go ahead and see what he has to say about this man who enabled people to get married.
So, does Santa Claus exist? The answer is yes, definitely. Santa Claus is real. And today we would like to introduce to you the real Father Christmas. To tell you that Santa Claus comes from Saint Nicholas is probably not new information for most of you. We call Santa Claus Saint Nick, and Santa Claus is literally Saint Nicholas. But who was the real saint? And he was real. He was a bishop of the church, and you will see an icon of him in most Orthodox churches around the world today. He has been a beloved saint for centuries. Nicholas was born in the 3rd century and lived into the 4th. He was bishop of a coastal city in Asia Minor called Myra. Myra is actually a city with a biblical history, and it was a city that Paul set sail from on one of his voyages that ended in shipwreck. Nicholas was born to extremely wealthy parents, and he inherited a lot of money. He was very rich. But he wanted to dedicate his entire life to Christ, and that meant giving all of it away and helping as many people as he could. And it's this spirit of giving and this story of him being a kind and generous person, coupled with the fact that St. Nicholas Day falls in the middle of the Advent season, that has resulted in the development of the Santa.
So it looks like the day he died, December 6th, is actually St. Nicholas Day. That is probably, I would guess, celebrated by the Catholic Church. As well as, I would assume, sailors, since he is the patron saint of sailors, which this guy has not mentioned yet. But it's the 6th day of the Advent season, I guess, so that's a little trivia there for you.
Claus legend. There is a famous legend of Nicholas at his peak Santa Claus levels, and it is a story of him helping out an entire family. In this legend, Nicholas has heard of a father with 3 daughters that are slipping into poverty that is about to spiral out of control. Now, the father would like each of his daughters to be taken care of. He wants to see them married off and happy and comfortable, but he can't afford it.
Okay, this is much in contradiction to, I would assume, the modern prescription for young women today. This is a dad who wants his daughters to be taken care of, and the natural way that they can be taken care of is by getting married and having a man not just swear to lay his life down for them the rest of their lives. Now, that I think is a better narrative than what's going on now. We have a narrative of independence and a narrative of I don't need anybody. I can do everything myself and take care of myself in the modern world today. And that is not only a recipe for a less than the best life in general, but I would say it's just making things harder on yourself than they need to be. Like, I don't really care if you're capable of taking care of yourself by yourself. What I care about is, like, are you making good choices? And a good choice is not something that makes your life and the lives of those around you harder. A good choice is something that makes your life and the lives of those around you much more fulfilling, I think. And so marriage, I think, is the natural road there. You're made to rely on somebody other than yourself. You're made to depend on somebody other than yourself. This is true for both men and women. And so any ideology which would seek to make you believe subtly, however subtly, that you don't need to pursue the goal of marriage, I think is dangerous, and it leads to people, with lots of regrets in the future, living hard lives, trying to shoulder lots of loads and burdens by themselves with no help, and also it just leads to a less than the best, life in general. I think you're missing out on so much that you could have if you choose to decline this road that God has given you. I would argue, like 99% of people are intended for this road, as I've argued elsewhere. So this is, I think, a good narrative. But anyway, the dad in this story is concerned about his daughters, like I said at the beginning of the episode, not having a partner, a spouse, because they don't have a dowry to bring to the table. And like I mentioned, a dowry back then was what a man got in exchange for taking care of a woman for the rest of his life. And so they're in a tough spot. And some stories actually say that the only way these women thought, and the dad thought, they were going to be able to support themselves is through prostitution. And so this is a really serious situation that they find themselves in now, back then. And so let's talk about what Nicholas did in the next part of this video for this family. Some of you probably know this story, but I just think, and I'm going to get to why, I think this is one of the most profound and appealing stories to me personally. And this is what I want to be like. So let's see kind of what he does for them.
He needs money. Nicholas has the cash, but Nicholas also has humility, and he wants to help them without them knowing about it. And he's been doing this around the city and the area for a long time. So he goes out late at night with a bag of money. He finds the poor man's house and he tosses the money into the window. The next morning the family find it, and one of the daughters is able to get married and is sorted. There are 2 daughters left. St. Nicholas returns in the dark of night with a bag of money, throws it in through the window, it sails through the air and lands in a shoe drying by the fireplace. And this is the storied origin of putting presents into shoes, of Santa Claus leaving presents in shoes, which is what happens in most of Europe. In some countries it's the stocking, and that's probably the one you're most familiar with in England.
So this is where the tradition of stockings came from. For those of you who don't know, Saint Nicholas actually began leaving dowries in, well, it says the shoe. That's what the legend says, the shoes of these girls. And that is how they had the money to get married. And notice what the heroism act in this story is. It's not saving someone from death. It's not giving to the poor who are, destitute and homeless. It's not feeding somebody who needs food. It's not caring for somebody who's been beaten up on the side of the road, which is a really pretty standard Christian narrative. And there are lots of stories about that. This story is about a man who enables girls who are not able to get married to get married. This is a beautiful story because personally, I don't relate as much to people who have been beaten up and abandoned on the side of the road. That's not my life story. I don't relate to people who are destitute and without food or shelter. That's not my story. But I do relate to people who find themselves in a situation where it's very difficult for them to get married. And I know how hard it is to be in that situation because I lived that for a long time. Okay. And so what I really like about this story is there's a man who has the means. He's a man with wealth. He's a man with experience. He's the man with the ability to help, who comes into a situation and enables somebody who it's looking like they're not going to be able to get married, to get married. And that's why I just think this is such a beautiful story. And that's why I aspire to be like St. Nicholas, because there are young people today who are called of God undoubtedly to get married, who are finding themselves in, for whatever reason, either the unhospitable dating environment of the modern world, or their lack of ability to generate enough income to support a family, or a lack of maturity that is necessary to get them married. For whatever reason, they find themselves in a situation where they are having a hard time getting married. They don't have whatever they need. And so this show, I hope, is basically a Santa Claus for those young people, for lack of a better word. I hope this is giving you what you need in order to get married. Because not only marriage is one of the best decisions that you can make with your life, guys. And this aligns with my personal experience. Marrying my wife was the best decision I ever made in my entire life outside of following Jesus Christ, bar none, by far. Okay. And so I'm just super passionate about, my life was really, I had a good life, but I was not happy before I married. And now I am so happy. And so I just want to try and give that away to other people, and be like a modern day Santa Claus for young people who are looking to pursue the goal of marriage and family, especially ones that don't have what they need. And I mean, like, spiritually, emotionally, intellectually, monetarily. I want to be able to give them all of that in order to spur them on and help them along in their goal towards marriage. So this is a really cool story. Let's see what else he continues to do. Because there's still one girl who does not have a dowry.
In America. Now, the father by this point wants to find out who this is that's been throwing money in through the window, and he stays up and waits to see who this mysterious person might be. He encounters and catches the bishop of the city in action, throwing money into windows, and the story from there lives on. This is one of many legends associated with Nicholas giving money, of saving children especially, but entire families from poverty. Orphans, widows, homeless. Nicholas was an example of generosity, and because of this example of generosity, and because of many things associated with him, we remember him across the Christian world to this day. Over the centuries, the legend of Saint Nicholas has grown. His day...
And here's something that I've noticed, especially in Protestant Christianity, just to pick on the Protestants for a second, since I pick on everybody at some point or other, which, it's just part of the show. A lot of them assume that because the Catholic Church has made major mistakes in the past, not the least of which the selling of indulgences and things like that, they assume that all saints are somehow not deserving of credit or recognition or admiration by mainstream Christianity. And I think that is an error, because a lot of these saints that are discussed in these stories go way above and beyond what the average follower of Jesus is doing for the kingdom of God. And that's how they become saints. Like, I don't know if you guys know this, but you don't become a saint by being an average Christian or even a good Christian. You become a saint by laying your entire life down for the kingdom of God, and doing everything for the people who need it around you. I think the Catholics have a way better worldview and practice of helping the poor than do most Protestants. And so for Protestants to shout down from a high horse that because of the errors the Catholic Church has made in the past, that all saints should not be worthy of recognition or admiration, or even say that out of a reactionaryism to this idea that saints are too venerated, I think it's just arrogant, and it's a little bit, it's just, you're just misinformed, because these people really did more than you are doing for the kingdom of God, if I'm being totally honest with you, in all likelihood. Now, maybe you're giving in secret to the poor, you're serving people night and day, you're laying your life down for your friend constantly, and maybe that's just your lifestyle, and I'm not aware of it, but I don't know many people in my life who go to the levels that these saints have gone to follow the words of Jesus. And so I think to undermine them or not give them credit is a little bit disingenuous and arrogant, honestly. It's like a child insulting a seasoned adult in whatever field, when that child has no idea the amount of work and effort that person has gone to be successful in that field. It really is a form of arrogance that I think is not rivaled by very many things today. So just be careful before you start insulting saints, and not just saints, but people in general who are really working hard to serve the kingdom of God. I mean, we're supposed to treat the least of the people we meet like Jesus himself, because that's, in a sense, according to Jesus, treating Jesus well. And so these people are doing that great. I see no reason to, insult their memory just because you disagree with some of the choices that the Catholic Church has made in the past, which granted are harmful, but you need to keep that in mind.
Today is the 6th of December, and in many countries this is the day to give presents, sweets and oranges to friends and family, and especially children. Often these are left in shoes, sometimes in stockings by the fire. While we are on a bit of a myth-breaking trend, I'm going to just quickly say that Coca-Cola was not the reason that Santa Claus is red. Santa Claus had been depicted in red for several decades before Coca-Cola.
Okay, so there's some people that are saying that the first time Santa was depicted in red was 1930 with a Coke ad here. But this guy is pointing out that Santa Claus has been depicted in red, as you can see with the holly up here, as far back as 1881, or at least that's the example that he gave in Harper's Weekly. That's an interesting little bit of trivia for you, too, as far as what Santa Claus has been depicted as across the centuries.
Coca-Cola's famous campaign. The name Santa Claus comes from the Dutch Sinterklaas, which means literally Saint Nicholas. Also of interesting note, there is a town in America called Santa Claus. And there are many legends surrounding Saint Nicholas of Myra, and of course many fables and fairy tales surrounding Santa. But behind all of them is the knowledge that Santa Claus is real. He is a saint, a bishop, and as a saint that means that he is a friend of Jesus Christ. He is an example not of receiving presents, but of giving things away. So unlike the round and jolly Santa Claus you'll see in commercials and on television, we are called to be saints. We are called to be like the real Santa Claus. Let's remember that this Christmas season. We are almost at Christmas, and that's a very exciting thing. I hope you're enjoying our lovely Christmassy patristic set. In terms of tea, this tea is a green tea with cinnamon.
So his video is going off here. That was a really good video altogether. I did want to just look up real quick here who it was that the legend goes St. Nicholas hit in the face. It was Arius at the Council of Nicaea in 325. The story goes that Nicholas became enraged when Arius argued that Jesus was fully human and not God, which is clearly heresy. So you can understand why Nicholas would have an emotional reaction. I actually understand this emotional reaction. I'm not saying it's justified. I don't think you should, use violence again, like I said, without defending yourself or without it being for defense. I don't think that's in line with the teachings of Jesus, but I understand his emotional reaction here just because even today, when people insult Jesus in some way, say that he was either not telling the truth or that he was doing something wrong, that really particularly bothers me. Or even just uses his, the classic uses his name as a cuss word or an exclamation or something like that, and not a prayer or not out of reverence and sincerity. That does bother me. And I don't know, you probably have the same experience with me in this area, but there is an emotional reaction in me whenever I hear that, because I think Jesus was the best man to ever live. I think he was, and not just the best man to ever live, I think he was exactly who he said he was, God in the flesh, living among us, the creator of the universe. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. He's the source. He's the reason that we have connection with the Father now. After our rebellion, he came down to heal the breach through his sacrifice on the cross and restore connection between God and humanity. And I think anybody who insults that is really that's so affronting to my heart and so bothering to me. So I understand that for this guy to be suggesting that Jesus was fully human and not God would be so affronting to St. Nicholas. I understand that. But again, let's just keep in mind this Christmas season, especially hearkening to the words of Paul on unity for the church, that, we should just, and again, and I know that gets into the debate of who is in the church and who is not in the church, but just hearkening to the Christmas spirit here of generosity and giving is the main lesson that I want you guys to get out of this video, and especially as it relates to helping people get married, because that's kind of a group that is, guys, it's hard to get married today. Not just for one reason, not just for two reasons, many reasons, okay? As I've talked about elsewhere on the show, the dating landscape is pretty rough today. Men are swiping. We're moving our dating onto Tinder now, and online dating platforms. Men are swiping like every other woman they see. They're willing to go on a date with every other woman they see. Women are swiping right on a tiny percentage of the men they see. And so I'm not blaming either side for that, because there's There's reasons for both, but I'm saying it's an inhospitable environment for trying to find a spouse. People are more and more hesitant of meeting new people because of the sad experience that they've had with the opposite sex in the past. Women are skeptical of men who who give them advances, not sexually, but romantically, because of the men that they've seen in the past. People are skeptical of marriage because of how much they've seen marriage fall apart and how badly they've seen marriage done in the past, as well as bogus statistics floating around like 50% of marriages end in divorce and things like this. People have a really rough opinion of marriage. It's also hard financially to get married now at a young age because you have to be able to support a family financially in order to get married. And it's just a rough financial time, not only in this country, but in a lot of areas. And so there are just lots of hindrances, lots of obstacles, lots of hurdles for people who are trying to get married to overcome. And I just love this story about a man who recognized that and enabled people to follow the will of God for their life, his or her life. And that's what I want this show to be. If you know you're called of God to get married, and you are really passionately pursuing that goal and just finding yourself in a hard situation, a hard time, reach out to me and let me know what that's like. I've been in that position before. I know how hard it is, and I would love to talk to you about that and help you in any way that I can. And I hope that that's what this show is for you. So thank you guys so much for listening today. I hope you've enjoyed the podcast content we've discussed in this episode. If you have, reach out and let me know what you thought of it through the Facebook and Instagram direct message links. You can send me a personalized audio voice message. I like hearing your voice as opposed to reading what you type. So consider sending me a voice message instead of a text message. Text messages are great. I'm not insulting those, but just try to give me a voice message if you can. If you feel so led, I would love to hear that. And also, I would just love to talk to you about whatever it is you're having a hard time with. And I hope that actually that will enable me to create content that's better aligned with what you need, because I really do want this podcast, again, like I've said a million times, to be a source of giving for you in your season of finding it difficult to get married. And so thank you guys so much for listening today. I hope you have a Merry Christmas. It's been a wonderful year for the show. If you didn't catch our episode on all the things we've done this past year for young believers who are trying to pursue the goal of marriage and family, go back and listen to that. It was our our yearly summit for the year 2024. I believe it was episode 309. So the previous episode to this one, go back and check that out. And I will talk to you guys next time.